Hi, Brian.
Hi, Melissa.
Can you tell everybody who you is?
Yes. What's up, everybody? I'm Brian Quijada. I am the playwright, composer of Somewhere Over the Border.
Yes, you are.
I
You
am.
are in residence right this second at Syracuse Stage.
I'm right here. I'm out here. Yeah, it's been a blast. I'm having such a great time. I'm like on cloud nine. It's such a surreal experience to be here.
That's so great. Yeah. So, before we get into all about your show, I want to know more about you, Brian. With a man
Proceed.
behind the arts, the mystery, the myth, the legend. Like where were you born? Where were you raised? How did you
Yeah.
become all of the multi hyphenate things that you are? Hit me with it.
I don't even know who I am. I don't even know. I don't know how to answer this question. I was born in the northern Chicagoland area.
Mhm.
Um, I rep, the Bears, the Bulls, and the Chicago Cubs because I'm a North Setter. And from the show, if you see it, you'll know that my mom and my dad came over in the 70s from the country of El Salvador.
Mhm.
And I came up in the early 90s. I was born in 88. And I think the household wasn't like, they didn't know that they were actually raising us to be artists. Uh,
Mm.
but by like blasting music and like by like taking us to parties and like encouraging us, like by being like, my parents were like great dancers. You know what I mean? By like doing all
Yep.
these things, and like by like um, watching movies with us, and
Yeah.
they let us watch anything we wanted, which was pretty amazing. I mean, talk to us, right? We didn't have foul mouths or anything. We couldn't, but we were.
I know
uh,
what you mean. I know what you mean. You had a rich like library to
yeah, exactly,
tap
exactly.
into.
And so I think I'm the youngest of four brothers, two of which the oldest of which are half brothers,
Mm.
one of which who is a character in my play,
Mhm.
Fernando. But me and Marvin were both born. He's my next oldest brother, and we were both born in the United States, and we both became artists.
Really?
And I think the bug hit him first. He, you know, took an acting class in high school and then decided to go to college for it. And when he went to college, I was in middle school, and so he took me to go see my first play, which was Cabaret, at his college, and I was like blown away. I couldn't. It's still my favorite play. I want to play the MC one day.
Yeah, you should. That would
Oh
be
my god, I would love it.
now,
Love
just
it.
say world, you heard it.
But anyway, I like from seeing that play, I was hooked. I was just like, I want to do this. I just want to be an actor. And I had to learn how to sing, so I started taking choir and but like I don't have I don't know if you can just hear by the resonance of my voice. It's like I have a pretty deep ass voice, and
Mhm.
so uh, being in musicals was a little weird just because my voice was so low. Um,
Like from when you were like out
Oh
the womb?
yeah,
Like,
I think a deep voice as like a seventh grader.
that's funny.
But
You're like,
anyway,
hey,
yeah,
ladies.
I kind of just wanted to be in musicals and plays, and then I did them in high school, and then I was like, okay, cool. There was like a little tiff for the first few years of college because my parents didn't want me to be an artist. Marvin had graduated to be an actor, and they were like, come on, man, like do something. We came to the United States for the American dream, and like, how are you going to do that by being an artist? I'm like, we can do it, we can do it. But I went to first school to become a teacher, an English teacher, and then about 2 years in, I was just like, I have to, I have to follow it.
Mm.
It was like the stars aligned, and I was able to stay in the theater program at the University of Iowa, and
Oh,
where I met like amazing folks who huge influences. I mean, I went to school with Jen Silverman, Idris Goodwin, Tony
yes.
Meneses,
Oh,
Basil
oh,
Kremendall, like stacked colleagues at
you did.
college, and graduated and just did straight plays again because I still don't have much confidence in my singing voice. So it's mostly like straight plays that I did up until I think 2015, 2016, when I started writing Where Did We Sit on the Bus, which was my first solo show, my first play ever, my solo show. And that kind of changed everything for me, where I was kind of sick of waiting for the perfect play to come along.
Mm-hmm.
Some plays got really close.
Mm-hmm.
And that play made me realize that there was like that I had something to say, not just as an actor, but as a writer. And
in terms of what you said about Where We Sit on the Bus, about making the thing that you wanted to see,
mm-hmm.
Especially as someone who is a creator, it's not like you're auditioning and you're going out for things. Like, you were like, no, I have this story that is specific to me, and because it was such a success, it's clear that it was necessary to others, because that specificity of your personal experience was universal for so many. And so, and this is my very long segue into Somewhere Over the Border.
I love it.
But I just think, because as a Latina, I don't get to see a lot of us on stage. I don't get to see a lot of us on TV. There's a void. And so whenever we do get, the prize of getting to show something, it's a huge deal. And I'm just thinking about your mother's story in Somewhere Over the Border, the all Latinx cast that you've assembled with Rebecca Martinez, our director. It's not just a co-pro, it's also happening at Teatro Vista in Chicago. And the show is going to be a lot of places. And like Julian, I know, right? Julian Mesri, the music director. I mean, there's Tanya Orellana, the scenic. I mean, it's also, in addition to telling our stories, it's kind of rare sometimes to know that the team is majority, by POC, or even of the culture that you're telling. And what has that been like?
I've never been in the Heights. I've never been a part of In the Heights.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only musical that I can really think of that has that many Latina people in the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Or part of the production team. Like, I'm trying to,
I'm trying to think too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like one that has. I mean, this. I've never been in a room where it has this many, and I think,
really?
Yeah, and but that's just me. I mean, I know Rebecca works primarily on shows about Latina people, and so she not to say I'm not, like, that's just me. Personal experience is that is a moving experience, and I think I realized it just like when the band showed up, and we've got Hector Diaz on the bass and Freddie on percussion, and you're just like, holy shit. I'm sorry. I don't know.
You can swear, it's fine. We got
where it's like, wow, like I've never this is, I mean, Where Did We Sit on the Bus is like a play with music, but this is like my first musical, I guess. Yeah, it is. And so having
non-solo musical.
Non-solo, yeah, musical. And having a sitz probe, which is where the band finally plays with the actors after weeks of rehearsal.
Yeah.
And they're singing cumbias, and they're singing boleros, and they're singing tangos, and all this range of music, the genres of music that we all came up on.
Yeah.
It is an incredibly moving thing, and I hope that there is more of it in my life, you know what I mean, and in others, like, who are also like, if you cannot produce a 25 person In the Heights play, then there's a 6-cast show. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like I think there's something really surprising, because it wasn't like, I find myself often in this I guess this scenario where I'm like, I didn't even think about what this means, is writing writing a show like this is seeing a cast of a central, like a cast doing a Central American story, which is even more rare. I feel like I've like, anytime I see a Salvadoran in a play, they're like the Salvatrucha, like, MS-13 gang member, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you don't see Central American stories often. And not only that, but like a musical like this, that's kind of, on the smaller end. I mean, it's big. They make it big.
Well, so for anybody watching this who doesn't know what it's about, tell us what it's about. Give us like a little plug.
Of course. The story is it's the story of my mother crossing the border. The real life story is that she had my brother Fernando at a very young age. He was a teenager. And then I had him. It was very hard to have a child that young. She heard how dope the USA was. And the war was coming. The Civil War in El Salvador was coming. So she's just like, I got to get the hell out of here. She had heard how amazing America was, and that it was basically like the land of opportunity. And she decides to go. So the story is her leaving Fernando, knowing that it was too dangerous, that the road was too dangerous, crossing the border into Guatemala, crossing the border into Mexico, going all through Mexico, and then crossing into the United States, and then returning for him. She thought it would take like weeks, months. It took 10 years.
Wow.
It's that story, mashed up with The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So along the way, she meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion in this version,
and the Wizard.
And the Wizard. There's flying monkeys. There's ruby red slippers. It's just done in the scope of my mother's story.
In 90 minutes.
In 90 minutes. It's a wild, fast ride. But that's the story.
Yeah.
And it's been just like it's been a blast to make, and it's the idea of taking, I think, a story that we all love and know and kind of came up on, and that's been adapted a bunch. The joke is just like there's Wicked, there's The Wiz.
Yep. It's time for a Latino version. That's fine.
Yeah, like,
but I feel like you really made it your own, though.
Yeah.
It's like infusion of The Wizard of Oz, but it's Reina's story.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like genre hunting, or like, you're kind of like, oh, that's the Tin Man. You're like, it's just like, you could miss it. You could almost miss it. Yeah. You can watch this story and be like, I mean, the hope is that people walk in and sit down and they're able to, like, I mean, they did. It's pretty undeniable that they link. But you could come and be like, oh, snap, realize that it's The Wizard of Oz later. It's
a really good title, by the way. It's really good. I mentioned it to somebody, they're like, oh, good title. Smart. And I heard you wrote the book and lyrics in 7 days. Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
That's crazy.
It's insane. I don't know that that'll ever happen again. That was and I didn't. Yeah. It was 7 days. It was because I got asked to. My friend who teaches out at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro was just like, "Hey, do you want to like come work on a play with my students?" And I was just like, I have a solo show, so I'll have to like write a big one. Like I have to write something that isn't just one person. And so I had been on the phone with my mom. Going back to like what you said about, parents being like, we came to this country so like you could have all this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a very real thing. That's like a, that's years and years of indoctrination
And guilt.
like dad, and but like my mom too. Like she was like the story of her crossing the desert in 3 days. The story of her laying under a board covered with flowers on top in the back of a pickup truck to get through immigration. Those are stories that were like, tales that were repeated in the house often.
Yeah.
Those are parts that I knew. What I didn't know was the story of who my oldest brother's dad was. You know what I mean? Because that's not like a very easy conversation to have with your kids, right? Especially the ones that like, it's just like, oh yeah, he has a different dad. You know what I mean? Like my mom doesn't want to share those stories, but like it took me calling her and just on a long conversation being like, yo, so like, who's Fernando's dad and why does he have curly hair? You know what I mean? So after having that conversation and hearing that whole story, leading into what would be the actual crossing story that we heard for many years, having that conversation was the one that was just like, okay, cool. I need to like, that is an epic tale. And that needs to be written down. And I think about often like me, Brian, like the whitest of all white names, dude, wasn't a playwright, this story would have never been told. Like maybe not.
Wow.
Or like she would have told, she would have told the people that she knew it, and then it, it would live in the brains of the people that exist. But like, I think it's like, I know I hold, like, as she was telling me, held the responsibility of being like, man, how many stories like this go untold?
Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Can you tell everyone who you are?
My name's Tanya Orellana, and I'm the scenic designer for Somewhere Over the Border.
Awesome. So tell me, where are you from and how did you get into scenic design?
I grew up in San Francisco, specifically the Mission District, which is a predominantly Latinx neighborhood in San Francisco. And both my parents are from El Salvador.
Awesome. When did they come here?
In 1978, which is actually the exact same time in the script that Reina came over. Actually, my mom came over in 78, and my dad came closer to the 80s, like a couple years after my mom.
Did they meet here or did they meet in El Salvador?
They actually met there. They were high school sweethearts. And then she got pregnant and decided to come to the United States, and she came on her own first. And actually my dad made the journey soon after she came.
And was that pregnancy you?
No, it was my older sister, Jasenia.
Nice, nice. And then were you number 2?
I was number 2, yeah.
Awesome. Oh, so you were all born here?
Yeah, we were all born here.
Wow. Have you been back to El Salvador at all?
Yeah, actually, we just took a family trip there this past May. My uncle really wanted to go, and he actually he was sick and wanted to go, and he passed away soon after. So we took a family trip to El Salvador, and it was really nice. I had gone. Last time I had gone before that family trip was like 10 years before that, so it had been a while.
Wow. So this play must be pretty special then, huh?
Yeah, and I was trying to think. I think it's the first time I've worked on a play with a Salvadorian playwright, which is like I made a prop piece for a play that Milta Ortiz did, who's Salvadorian, but I've never actually done a set design for a play that takes place in El Salvador. So that part of it's really exciting to me. And then also the same journey that Reina made, basically like bus and foot to the United States. My father made that exact same journey. So a lot of like where I was pulling from was both my like my visual memories of El Salvador, but also a lot of the stories my father told me. Like we were trying to figure out, like, when you do a play about kind of a treacherous journey, but also, I don't know, the Wizard of Oz is both like this beautiful journey, it's like colorful and the yellow brick road and all the beautiful land she sees, but then there's also like terrifying flying monkeys. And
Yeah.
and so, but it feels really appropriate for the journey. I would say in the 70s, it was, of course, very dangerous to go from El Salvador to the United States, but since then it's become way more dangerous. But so when my father has described it, it was really his first time, might have even been the first time leaving the capital. He was born in San Salvador. And so it was his first time like taking a big trip away from home. And he like hiked through the mountains of Guatemala, and they go to Guatemala in the play too. And he describes it as like this really having moments where it was very difficult, but also moments of like seeing the beautiful, amazing mountains of Guatemala for the first time. And it really like expanding his mind to like leave home for the first time.
Wow. And so, well, first let's go into like what drew you to theater? How did you get into theater? How did you find set design?
Yeah, what's funny is I think I was circling theater for a long time. Like I wanted to go see plays, and I won tickets to the opera from like an essay writing competition in 4th grade. And like every birthday I would ask my mom to go, but for some reason I didn't really know that set design was a career you could have. Like and it really wasn't until college where I had a work study job in the theater department, because I just went to the work study office and I was like, I need a job and I don't want it to be in an office. And they were like, you can work for the theater. And I was like, fine, that sounds fine. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so random. And I got there and I met people majoring in set design, and it just like blew my mind that somebody could do that for a living, or that like you would go to college. It seems so like that's just fun. Like you could go to college for something fun. That doesn't something seems off about that. And then I was actually studying historic architecture at the time, and I ended up switching my major and actually like leaving the college and coming back to San Francisco. I was on the East Coast at the time, and then majoring in set design, and that's how I got into it.
Wow, I love that. So I was thinking like, oh, she must have been an actor, because everyone starts acting. But
I know.
I like that. Well, sounds like you were always interested in buildings and design in some way.
Yeah, my high school had an architecture elective, and I took it like 3.5 years. So almost my full time in high school. So I already knew how to draft and make models and like do that kind of stuff. And so, and actually all our drafting in high school, it was super old school, and it was all in ink. So like you would do your drafting on this really nice paper, and you'd have to like put down an ink line and wait for it to dry before you moved your ruler, or it would like make this huge ink line all over your paper, and you'd have to start all over. So when I found that you could draft in pencil, and now with Vectorworks, I'm like, oh my God, this is heaven. But
what did your parents support your desire to do theater?
My mom did. My grandmother was a dressmaker. She did a lot of things, but she had a business where she made designed and made wedding dresses, and also she would do basically like wedding decor. So you could go to her and get like your flower. She made all these like huge paper flowers. So your flower and your dress and your like decoration for your tables. So my mom was like very supportive of art and like making, and it was very natural in our house to be making stuff. But my dad was not as supportive. He was like,
there's always one.
He had a hard time also, like, what do you mean you're going to college for art? Like, you're supposed to be like a doctor or a lawyer. Like, it was a different journey, right? He's like, I crossed the border so you could, have success, and you're telling me you're going to be a theater artist. So And for so long, he would get me, like, he could understand architect.
Mm-hmm.
So he kept trying to get me to switch, like, oh, this is close enough to you telling me you could be an architect. When I see what you're doing, like making models and stuff, why don't you just do something that makes money? Like, why, if there's like a career right to the left of it that you could support yourself with. And so, and I would say he didn't really accept it until graduate school. Like when I was like, oh no, I'm really like pursuing this thing all the way. And now he's very supportive, and I think I've proven that like it's a career I could support myself and that kind of thing. But it was a while. I still have so many architecture magazines from him. Like, I got you these.
So wait, was the "I crossed the border for you" a line that he would use often?
No, I think he didn't. I mean, it's a weird like. I think all the stories I have about that came out in snippets more than like, because it's something that's. I think it's actually something that he doesn't talk about super frequently. So no, but I think the idea of like coming to this country is more of a line. Like, we came here for this reason. We came here for this. Like, this place is safe for this. There's a lot of like, the reason we're here is for you all to be successful. And so in that way, I think
Go ahead.
No, in that way it kind of, I think to me, I like, that's the subtext that I heard.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Do you feel that pressure at all still, or no? Or now that you're quite successful, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably still have that pressure in me. I think I have a lot of drive and maybe sort of have to, and overbooking and that kind of normal theater thing. So I think there's a way that probably the amount that I work and the amount that I choose to work is coming from all of that. I think so.
Yeah, I can relate. Trust me. With my grandmother immigrating here from Chile and sacrificing so much, even my mom sacrificing because she was born here, but still it's tough. Yeah, overcompensating, especially in our field, to prove ourselves. It's really hard.
Yeah, and you kind of feel like if you step to the left too much, or somehow, there's not a lot of wiggle room for failure. That I don't know that that's true, but that's how it feels. Like, oh no, if I mess this one up, or if, I do something wrong here, then like I'll never work again, which is of course not true.
Well, we're all that dramatic because we're all artists. So right. I know I am. So, well, it's really wonderful to have you at stage because your work is beautiful. And I can also say that because we're working together on another show right now for Arizona Theater Company, which overlaps with Border, which is kind of fun. But how did you get involved with Somewhere Over the Border?
Well, Rebecca Martinez, the director, I think people had recommended us to one another in different ways. Like, you should work with this person. And so she reached out to me. And as soon as I read the script, I was super excited. And her name, I've seen her work a lot. Like, I've had friends work with her. And so she's kind of a name that people have recommended. And so I said yes pretty fast.
Good. So you read the script. What was your first impression?
I was like, wow, this is a big show. Like, because I think the idea of mixing such an epic and well-known play, like in theater, Wizard of Oz is so large, and it's been done in so many different ways, in so many successful ways. Like, people have adapted it, and those adaptations have been very successful. And mixing it with the journey of the very epic journey of coming from Central America to the United States. I think it's super smart. Like, I think it's a really, I know there's a lot, there's a lot of border plays, and I think, especially as someone who's Central American, I get asked to do a lot of border plays, and I think what's exciting about this one is there is still a sense of joy to it, so that like somehow you can say like, we're going to talk about this experience that a lot of our community goes through and is still going through, and we're going to like tell it in a way that is beautiful and meaningful and also fun, and there's music, and like, I know I've talked to my mom, there was a huge civil war in El Salvador that started late 70s into the 80s, and of course it's why so many people left around this time that our main character Reina left. And when I've talked to my mom about it, I think especially when I was younger, I had this idea that everything about it was tragic, that like where she came from was tragic, and she left because it was so difficult. And she was like, well, like in war, humans are still humans. They still fall in love. We have like a great ability to just turn whatever condition we live in into normalcy. Like and so she was kind of like, yeah, but you still like, you still go to parties down the street. I mean, there was a time in the war in the 80s where it was super bad. So, but I think growing up, even with extreme economic hardship and choosing to leave because of that hardship doesn't mean you're not like celebrating birthdays and like living your life. And so I think there's a way that you can talk about these things and still show people having like joyful moments with each other within the tragedy of it and the hardship of it.
That's a really great point. And remembering the humanity of everyone's story, no matter where they come from, which ultimately does unite us all, because everybody can relate to falling in love, having children, wanting a better life, even that. So.
Yeah, I actually had, I did a big trip to El Salvador when I was 21 by myself, and I lived there for a couple months with my family that's still down there, and they didn't really know what to do with me during the week because I couldn't just like run around by myself, and so they ended up finding a painter that lived down the street from me, like a few blocks from the house, and I took art painting classes with him, like oil painting classes in his studio. Wow. Yeah, it was super great, and he told me a similar thing because he was talking about the war and how he was like, I was here all through the war and I was still painting. I was like, I'm a painter, and what I do is paint, and a way that I need to deal and process with what was happening was painting. So that because I was at a time, I was 21, and I actually like took a break from college and went to El Salvador and then came back, and I was having a little bit like questioning my career choice, and to hear him kind of talk about living through a pretty horrendous, bloody civil war and still finding art and art making to be meaningful was really impactful to like me really firmly choosing to stay in the arts.
Wow. So this feels almost full circle in a way.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Will any of your family be able to see the show?
No, I don't think they'll be able to fly out to Syracuse.
But we're streaming it. They can see it online.
Oh, then yes, definitely. You're right.
Yeah,
oh yeah, 100%. Yes, yeah. When we were talking about El Salvador, there was a question of like, in the Wizard of Oz, it starts off in black and white, and when I think of El Salvador, I think of it as the colorful place. When I've gone to visit, it does have so much color. So we kind of leaned away from making the starting point of El Salvador black and white, but we still wanted some sense of like the economic hardship that El Salvador was going through and the reason someone would leave. And so we started playing with like the materials of the house. Like a lot of the houses in El Salvador are concrete and stucco, and like a lot of houses made out of cinder blocks. So we made the world out of this kind of rocky stucco material, and then painted a mural of sky on it so that it had a sense, still had that sense of color, but a faded mural so that we could have a sense of the colorful, but still also a sense of the economic hardship that was happening there at the time. And then there's this back wall of distressed corrugated metal, which is also a material that is very common there now. And also I went back and looked at a bunch of research of El Salvador in the 70s, and there was still like a lot of corrugated metal that makes up the houses. So we have this back wall of corrugated metal, and then when she leaves El Salvador and starts her journey, the wall gets removed, and the mural, you see a like expansive mural of sky behind it. And the idea behind that was that like this is the beginning of both her leaving El Salvador and just expanding herself as she steps out into the world, and very much inspired by my father and his descriptions.
Oh, that's beautiful. Does your dad know that he's part of this design and this show in a way?
Not yet. I mean, I like use my family for a lot of inspiration.
Me too.
I think some of it we talk about, and some of it just becomes part of my process.
Yeah. Well, this feels very close to home. I mean, it really is. Yeah. The border in your history.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be part of this production. I don't think I pull from my personal experience a lot while designing, but this is one that I really feel like, oh no, like this is all the little details are not like research that I've done. I'm like, we have to get the pupusas right. Like the way a pupusa looks is really important. And I don't know, it's really lovely to work on something that asks me to just dig deeper into myself and express that in a clear way.
Well, we're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
And so the show is. So thank you for going to that deep place and for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.